Thanks for stopping in at Down the Road Show. With all the craziness out there, I know we'd all like to think we're Superman and invincible, but we're not. We're all a bunch of broke Batman. So, what do I do to get out of bed and keep myself as healthy as I possibly can? I use everyday natural products. This is their Cbd Elixir. It's great and works amazing for my pinched nerves in my neck and my lower back. I have all kinds of issues that make it so some days I can't even get out of bed. This helps me get out of bed to get my day going and keep it going. I especially like it in the liquid form with the pump, so I can just throw it in my morning coffee to get going. And because it's in liquid, I think it gets into my system a lot faster and better than most of the other CBD products I've tried out there. But don't take my word for it. Try it yourself. Go to enpstore.com and order yourself a bottle or try some of their other products that we'll be talking more about here on Down the Road Show. Thanks for stopping in, and go to ENP Store for more. I'm excited to welcome in our next guest. His name is Bobby Nash. We just recently became friends, and I'm excited to talk to him about all of his work. How are you doing today, Bobby?
I am wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So you are a writer, and behind you is all kinds of merchandise promoting your writing. What got you into writing?
It also serves the dual purpose of covering up the clutter in my office. So yeah, the poster.
Your Funko Pop collection is right behind there. I know it is.
There's stacks of books and just all assorted junk behind the poster. I got started writing when I was a teenager. I had this grand dream of becoming a comic book artist. That was the goal. That was the dream. Unfortunately, I'm not quite that good. And yeah, it's just, there are more limitations in the drawing than I would like to admit. But I started writing stories to have stuff to draw. And then I noticed other friends of mine who were into creating their own comics started asking me to draw a story or write stories for them to draw. And so that's how I kind of got started with thinking of, maybe I could write some stuff. And then I had a friend who gave me some, it was hard to hear advice at the time that, it's like, look, you're splitting your focus between the writing and the drawing.
Right.
If you were to focus on one, you would probably get better at it. And it was hard to hear, but I guess I heard it at the right time because it stuck.
Yeah.
And so I started focusing on the writing, and within 2 years, I think I had sold my first professional comic script.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah. So I worked in comics pretty early on.
What were your first comic strips then? Were those for like a local newspaper or a magazine?
Well, I did some stuff for a local magazine. There was a kids magazine that ran once a month. It was a supplement to our local newspaper. And I did comic strips for them where I would write and draw them. And I did that for 12 years. I also did some small local, with other friends stuff. But my first, professional job where it was at a big publisher and all that was a book called Demon Slayer, which was at Avatar Press. It had moved over from Image to Avatar. And the scripter, the artist plotted it. And it was his character. And they had lost their scripter in the move. And so I had sent out, a year before that had happened, I had sent out a bunch of emails to any publisher with a website introducing myself and saying, hi, I'm a writer. I'd love, and
got to put yourself out there. Got to do it. Yeah.
Exactly. Out of all the emails I sent out, I received one reply, which was from the artist who had his own company at the time. And he's like, sorry, we're shutting down, blah, but thank you for writing. And a year later, he's like, still interested in writing some stuff? And so I did a tryout for them. They liked it. And I stayed on the book for a few years. So
That's awesome. And you just kind of never really know, and that's what the point of putting yourself out there and networking. You never know where that little first hit is going to come from. And
exactly.
And something I talk about with people all the time, because they're always asking me, how do I get into comic books? You know, you go to a lot of Comic Cons, you know a lot of artists and writers, and I tell people all the time, it's like, look, everybody wants to work for DC or Marvel, but they're not the only comic book companies out there. And like, you got your start, and a lot of writers and comic book artists did get their start doing little comic strips for local newspapers or magazines. And it's those baby steps. People don't realize. They just want to fast forward and jump right into the big DC pond. But like, there's work out there for everybody if you go out there and find it.
Absolutely. Plus, you hone your craft while you're doing it. You're right. There's work to be done. You learn how to deal with things like deadlines, which are very important. That, you know, you have to be able to turn stuff in on time, or there's a big blank spot where your strip's supposed to be. So you learn a lot by doing these things. You also get to know people in your community. You know, doing these comic strips led to some drawing for some advertising. You know, when the paper goes, hey, we're creating an ad for this company, and they need a piece of art. Hey, what about the guy that draws our strips? They call me up. I do a little piece of art, get a little extra money. There are opportunities. Yeah, you're right. Most people think, you know, I'm going to write my first comic book. It's going to be Batman. Never going to happen.
Everybody wants to work on Batman. That's just not.
I've been in publishing since 1992. I can't get to write Batman. You know.
I know 2 people that have written Batman and like 3 people that have drawn him, and everybody else wants to. Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's one of those things where there are a lot of opportunities out there, and of course with self-publishing and print on demand and ebooks and things like that, it's just so much easier today than it was when I started to just do your own books and get them out there. You may not be in comic shops, but you have opportunities to be in other places. And the same with my novels. I may not be on the bookshelf in Barnes and Noble, but I'm on their website. You can walk in there and they'll order any of my books for you, you know, and there's a lot of opportunities to get your work in front of people. You just have to get creative on how you do it.
Absolutely. And so let's get a little more into your books and your writing. So who's Snow?
Snow is a character that I created a couple of years ago. He had an interesting development. I had this idea around the time when the webisodes were a big thing on the internet, you know, the little 10-minute episode stories that would continue. I had this idea of doing a story. And so I was putting together ideas in my head. And one of them was the idea that became Snow. It was a different title at the time. But the opening chapter of Snow was pretty much in my head as the opening episode that would kick the story off. But I didn't really have the ability to get it filmed. I couldn't quite get it where I wanted it. But so the idea went back on the shelf in the back of my mind. And fast forward a year or 2 later, I get a call from a writer friend of mine. There's a new company called Stark Raving Press that was going to be doing ebooks, just ebooks, and they were looking for short novellas, like 30,000 word novellas that could continue on book to book to book, but they could sell ebooks on. And so I dusted off this idea, changed the name, added some stuff to it, pitched it to them. They liked it. And so Snowfalls came out through them, which was the first book, Snowfall. And unfortunately, the publisher didn't last. They've since gone out of business. So when I got the rights back, I had the option of either repackaging it and repurposing it and submitting it somewhere else. But I kind of like the novella format. Mm-hmm. And there's not a lot of publishers that are doing that. So I just decided if I wanted to stay in that format, the best option was to just do it myself.
Which makes sense with people's attention span today. Quick, easy, short reads is where it's at.
Right. Plus, I figured that way too. I could tell a story, and I could put out books a few times a year, and it's still the same amount as if I wrote just one big novel. But it gets the books out throughout the year, which hopefully keeps the character in the public eye a little bit.
Yeah, more content faster for the fans.
Exactly. And so I've put out 4 books so far, four novellas. I'm just now finishing up book 5. And so we're getting them out. We're putting them out as ebooks, but I also do paperbacks of the individuals, which was not my original plan, but I do a lot of conventions, except for this year.
Thanks, coronavirus.
Yeah. Oddly enough, I kept saying this year I was going to do fewer cons just to take a break. So I guess it worked out. I don't know. I missed the cons though.
Definitely the silver lining there that I'm definitely noticing with all my creative friends on Facebook is they're like, okay, time to hunker down and work on my personal projects instead of working my butt off, my fingers to the bone for a little bit of money for whoever lied about their budget.
It's like suddenly the next 6 weeks I have extra writing time because you know I'm home on the weekends the next 6 weeks in a row. So yeah, and so I put out the books. We put them out as ebooks. We put them out as paperbacks. Then I collect 3 into a thicker volume. So if someone really wants the novel size, you get a 90,000 word book.
That's a good idea.
We do, and then we have the ebook available in that kind of collected format. I also do a hardback of the collected format. We do audio books of all of them, and we do a collect. So we're trying to get them in as many formats as possible.
Yeah, because readers definitely like their different types of formats for collecting. For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Snow is an action adventure thriller kind of book. It's very much my love letter to PI and cop shows and books from the 70s and 80s. You'll recognize a lot of Magnum PI or Rockford Files in the types of stories we're telling.
Okay, quick segue. Are you watching the current Magnum PI?
I am. I don't like it as much as the old one, but it's okay.
You know what? I was on the fence, and I was just like, yeah, man, how do you replace Tom Selleck? And like, you're not putting him in the shirt and the hat, like, but it's its new thing, and it's grown on me. It has definitely grown on me as the season has gone on. And they did a mashup with Hawaii 5-0, which I love the new Hawaii 5-0. That's another one where I was like, quit doing these 80s remakes and whatnot. But then I was like, okay, this is really good.
The one thing I've noticed about new shows that compared to some of the old is there's a different way of telling stories. The old Magnum or MacGyver or any of those you pick, there were many episodes where it was just the one guy out doing stuff. And everything today seems to be team-based. I mean, even the MacGyver show, he's part of a team. Magnum is part of it. He's built a team around him.
I have a theory on that. I honestly think, bear with me here, I honestly think the Star Wars franchise changed the culture of entertainment in the sense of writing. Because if you look at the big dramatic scenes when it comes to the endings or middles of Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, there's always a conflict going on in multiple areas with multiple people that all resolves kind of around the same time to help with the win. And I don't recall seeing that in a lot of movies and TV before those movies. And now it's in everything.
Right. I also think the established idea of the earwigs has changed that a lot, because now you can have, instead of having to come up with clever ways of getting that information across, you've got somebody in their ear constantly going, and while that's cool, sometimes it takes away from the dramatic of, oh crap, I'm here by myself and I've got to solve this problem and I don't have tech support. I don't, and they always seem to have that, or they have to come up with some contrived reason for the earwigs not to work.
Right.
Kind of like in the 90s when they had to come up with, when it was the convenient no cell service. Because remember the X-Files did that all the time. We found the monsters out here. Great. Call for backup. No cell service. Oh. And so, but the technology has obviously changed to where some of the shows that the plots have to adapt. Right. Like you could have a plot in the 70s or 80s, which is just Thomas Magnum finds out there's going to be an assassination attempt on the governor of Hawaii. The governor of Hawaii is in an event on the other side of the island, and he has to get from this side of the island to this side of the island in time to save him and beat the bad guys there who are trying to stop him from getting there. That could be your whole plot. That plot doesn't work as well today because, there's going to be if there's no cell service, you can still text. There's multiple easy communications of how to solve some of these problems, which is something that pops into my head a lot when I watch old shows. It's like, wow, now they would just go call 911 and, problem solved. Now it's go find a phone, go flag down, someone. And so we have to get creative in how we tell those stories. And, because you can't ignore the technology because your readers are going to go like, well, why didn't they use a cell phone? So you have to kind of come up with clever ways to bring those characters up. But I think the earwig, as much as I think it's overused, I understand why it's used, because now you can have characters talking back and forth regardless of where they are. Sorry, I realize I talk with my hands, so your audience is going to like see me.
So do I. And I have vertigo, and I cause myself to trigger my own vertigo. Yeah. So do whoever I'm talking to. But yeah, and I think that's a good point though too, because look, modern consumerism and the average age of consumers out there compared to when we were that age in the 70s and 80s, they grew up in this technology. That's all they know.
Right.
So so that does have to change the way you do your own storytelling.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There are people in their 20s and that have never lived in a world that didn't have computers, that didn't have cell phones, didn't have the internet. For them, if anything ever happened and those things went away, they've never lived without that. I grew up, it was long distance to talk to the next county over, which was, 20 miles away. So,
now long distance.
Yeah. Now I talk to people around the world through the internet, in some ways, I think that the technology is wonderful because it allows us to, could you imagine when we were kids doing something like this interview we're doing now? This was the stuff of science fiction of, looking at someone else and talking to them through a camera phone or
honestly, look, okay, I had one of the 10 years ago when I started this, I was one of only 11 video podcasts on the entire planet. And live streaming was just coming out. And every time I tried to live stream, I couldn't get it to work for nothing. So I gave up on that and just filmed and edited and then uploaded to YouTube. But now we're in a world where technology has changed. And now that I have all my neck and back issues, I had to sell my camera because it was too heavy for me. And I can't stand long enough and I'm too dizzy. I can't even go to a convention. I was like, well, technology has finally caught up to where I was trying to make this podcast 10 years ago. Now I can just do it from home.
Oh, absolutely. It's wonderful. I mean, conventions are now live streaming panels. So, if you can't go to a con or you can still get the convention experience.
Absolutely. Yeah. I won't tell you whose idea that was that several conventions stole it from. This guy.
This guy.
Anyway, apparently they didn't like the budget I gave them.
So, but yeah, it's definitely a brave new world, and so I have to, you can't ignore the technology for the simplicity of a story,
Right.
which sometimes is bad. It's not bad. Bad's the wrong word. Sometimes it's frustrating because I want something to happen, and my character's like, but I have a cell phone.
But at the same time, it's like, okay, but back to what we're talking about, like that's the old school writing that I think people don't understand, especially in this newer age with they're just they don't concentrate on anything for like nobody's going to watch this entire they're done watching. We're 15 minutes in, they're done watching this podcast now. So, and I know that because they don't have an attention span. But I think a part of that is with the storytelling is where in the old days with the Magnum PI you could have just one character facing off with another character because it was about that suspense, and the suspense is a part of some of the greatest storytelling throughout filmmaking history, which now audiences aren't mature enough for that kind of suspense. And this is something I talk about all the time. I don't know if you're a Walking Dead fan or not, but there's lots of reasons to watch Walking Dead, but I always say the Walking Dead fans can be basically boiled down to two types of people. The first type, they're there for the zombies. They're horror fans. They love the blood. They love the gore. That's all they're there for. Now, you can be there for that and be the second type. Whereas, and I'm the second type, I'm there for the human conditions, the stories of how they hold on to their humanity in such horrific situations while dealing with both the zombie apocalypse or Walker apocalypse and dealing with the crappiness of humans. Like, that's why I tune in. And like so many people tuned out in like season 2 or 3 when all of a sudden it was like less violent and all of a sudden became more about the human condition. And it was just like, oh, not enough zombies. This show sucks now. It's like, why are you?
That's where you kind of miss the point. I mean, they tell you early on that The Walking Dead does not refer to the zombies. That the title actually refers to the people because they've all got the disease. They just haven't died yet, And yeah, so there's a lot to learn from that, from following those characters around, and that's where your drama comes from. So yeah, it's all at the end of the day. I mean, as a writer, the first thing that's important to me is character. Story is a close second, but character first, because if you know your characters well as a creator, the characters will inform your story decisions. I like to tell people in panels or writing panels that you can take and drop 3 characters into the exact same plot and get 3 different stories because characters will handle problems differently. Like if you drop Batman, Spider-Man, and Captain America in the same plot, each of those characters
is going to handle the situation differently. Yeah,
absolutely, yeah. And so
Batman doesn't have the same set of moral code that Captain America does.
Right. Well, plus, and Batman thinks of that he's very deductive. The detective, he's going to look at all the variables
in a cynical way.
Yeah. Spider-Man's going to go, well, I can just climb up and over, so he's going to look at it through how he can get in his own unique way. Cap's like, I got a shield and I can just break the door down. There's different, not that any of them are wrong, but they're just each character would handle things differently. So your story, once they go through that door, changes based on who that character is because of how they handle things. And so getting to know your characters really helps in that. And it informs things. Like in writing the Snow books, my plan was series 1 was going to be 6 books, 6 novellas. Each novella is a standalone story. You get a whole story in each one. But if you read all 6, it's one big story. So once I finish you finish book 4, then there's a little teaser chapter that leads you into book 5. And so doing that, I had this plan in my head for all 6, had it mapped out, knew what was going to happen in book 6. As I'm writing book 3, I totally screwed up that ending because the character decided to do something else.
Because the
So
characters were obeying to their own true nature.
exactly. So something I expected to do in book 6 happened in book 3, which of course meant, the story had to evolve and change. I think it became a better story as a result, because there were some characters who I hadn't treated as important as they became, who those characters stepped to the forefront and refused to just be side characters. Right. And so
sometime a 5th character becomes a good 2nd or 3rd character.
Absolutely, because you get to know them, and they, early in the story, they're not that important, but you don't realize until later how important they are. And so that's where once you get to know the characters, I mean, it's kind of a cliche to say, but you can just watch them do what they do, follow them along, and write down what they do. And that's very true, because in my head as a writer, they're real people. The characters are totally real. So when I try to make them do something that they wouldn't do based on how I know them to be, it feels wrong to me. That means it's going to feel wrong to the reader. So you have to really trust the characters. And
I think that's an important writing tip, is not being afraid to make change. And I think another important part of character development that people don't, like new writers don't realize, because I've written a couple scripts with a couple friends, and it's difficult writing in groups, especially when you're doing characters, because vernacular and verbiage is so important to any character in the way we speak. You speak different than I speak, and I speak different than my sisters and my mom. We all talk differently. And once you're splitting up the writing duties for a character, all of a sudden you're watching the vernacular and the language and the way they would present a situation change according to the way other people are writing it. It's like, this just doesn't read right. Like, I had to go in and rewrite like several things for different characters. It's just like, why would you even take that character in that direction? And they would never use a word like that.
Absolutely. And because it's not just what they say, but you're right. Everyone talks differently. Some people, people talk in different ways, but people also act in different ways. There are some people that use foul language a lot. It's just, without even realizing it. That's a character trait. You can use that as a character trait. There are different things, imagine some of your favorite characters. The writer will have them repeat gestures a lot. I like to use this. I have one character that every time something doesn't go his way and he's trying to figure it out, I have him doing this.
Well, that's a natural instinct.
It's like
thinking though, especially us bearded guys.
Yeah, but it's one of those things. It's like, oh, it's just, this is not right, and so he's rubbing, or different things like that, where you just get character things that people know, and oh, okay, I get it, I see what he's doing, and you can kind of. It also cuts down on the way I write, me having to explain everything. Well, once you know those characters, if I just say he scratched his chin, he rubbed his chin, they know because they've seen him do this before, and
right.
things like so yeah.
And that's something, and it sounds like you write very visually, because eventually you want this not to just be a book, but to be visualized in a TV show or a cartoon or a movie.
That would be cool. Yeah, because in my head, these are moving images. I see the story moving. When I write comic scripts, it's like I see it moving and I pause and go, okay, that's the panel I want, because I've paused the moving image. But yeah, as I'm writing a novel, I see the scenes in my head. I work scenes in my head all the time. And so, it's just a matter of writing down what I see and getting that on the page. And hopefully I do it well.
Well, let's talk more about working with artists and making a comic book, because there's a lot of misconceptions out there in the general public on just, I'm just going to write a comic book and find an artist and make a comic book. And it's not that easy. It doesn't work like that. Prime example. Yeah, I'm going to throw you under the bus here, Judd, in case you're watching this. My buddy Judd, he's a fantastic writer, has an amazing idea for a comic book and was going out looking for artists. And so I was going to help him find an artist, but he found one without me. And then so going to help him promote his stuff at a convention. And I'm like, show me some stuff. And he's like, well, this is all we got so far. I'm like, well, where's the rest? He's like, oh, you should have something for me next month. I'm like, what do you mean next month? He's like, well, yeah, he's turning out about a page a month for me. I'm like, that's not good, buddy. That's not how deadlines or how any of the comic book industry works. And you'll never be able to put this out on a consistent basis if you're only getting, like, look, one page a month. You're barely going to put out a comic book a year if you're lucky at that rate. And that's something he didn't understand. So let's talk more about working with a letterer, working with an inker, a penciler, and just all the different terms. Let's educate the people out there.
Well, the thing about comics, and there's no one way to make comics. And, because there are people that write full scripts. There are people that write the old Marvel method where I give you a plot and we'll script it later. There's, the method where two people just talk, the writer and artist talk, and the artist says, I got it. When I worked on Demon Slayer, I was just scripting. And so I would actually get pages, and I would get pages of pencils, and the penciler would call me and we would talk, and he says, here's what I'm thinking. And he would tell me the plot, and I would add dialogue, based on what I already had. So there's multiple ways of doing things. My preferred method, I like to write a full script. Panel 1, here's what's happening. Here's some dialogue. Panel 2, here's what's happening. Here's some dialogue. I like to do it that way because that way the artist knows what I'm thinking. But I'm not totally married to that. If I write a 5-panel page and the artist comes back and says, what if we did this? Because the artists are really thinking visually. And what if 6 panels and we did this? And 99.9% of the time I'm going to be like, great, go for it. So, there's give and take, it's really a collaboration. It's, I'm not just getting an artist and go, you draw exactly what I say. It's more of taking what I've written and elevating it, because the artists are storytellers as well. And so the artist can add things that takes an okay story and makes it a great story. And, in terms of what gets to the reader, most of what I write, the reader never sees, because a lot of what I do is an instruction manual for the artist. It's like, hey, we're going to go into this house. Here's what the house looks like. Or, hey, in 3 pages, we're going to find out this. So we need these clues peppered here.
Right.
Things like that. Yeah. So I'm not writing, like when I write something directly for the audience, you're writing it in a way to tease them and keep them going. With the artist, you're not teasing your artist. Your artist needs to know the facts.
Which is why it's important to find people that speak the same kind of creative style language.
Yes, right. Because if I say there's a character in silhouette on page 12, the artist needs to know who it is, so they draw the silhouette, to look like who it is. So there's things like that. You work with either a penciler and then an inker. Sometimes it's the same person, and they go through and they take your words and they'll do that. And sometimes, depending on your artist can do things that makes you take out dialogue. They can draw things in a way that expresses what I had them saying.
Right.
And so I don't need to have them say it anymore. So that's good. So you get this nice collaborative effort where the art and the story come together, and then you once everybody's happy, because usually there's some give and take. There's back and forth. What do you think of this? And can we change this? Or I really like to do this. hey, what if we move this over here and we might get a better, it's all that kind of stuff that happens.
Right. Once again,
And
the language of collaboration. Like
ex-
I've collaborated with a lot of people on a lot of things, and they don't always work.
right. And there's multiple things you can do. Like I worked on we did a graphic novel called Operation Silver Moon. I did it with artist Rick Johnson. And Rick and I were talking, and there's a big fight scene because this is a supernatural thing. There's werewolves and vampires and monsters and all this kind of stuff.
I'm waiting for those to show up any day here in 2020. Yeah. Any day now. Them, the aliens, the Terminators. I'm just waiting for it all to just screw it.
You kidding? I'm sure aliens fly by and go, nope.
I am not stopping there. Yeah, we are not stopping for gas at Earth. I hope you guys all use the bathroom until we get to Mars.
Yeah. But in terms of in doing this book, I'm talking, Rick and I would talk on the phone. He had the full script. I also believe, too, when you give the artist a script, you give them the whole script. I know some people do this. I'll give you 2 pages this week, 2 pages, I can't write that way because I sometimes get to the end and go, ooh, I need to put a clue in and go back and.
Right. Well, and I have a few writer friends that I know the art inspires the actual story, and that's that's their preferred method. Whereas it sounds like you're envisioning a lot already inside your head.
Yeah, and I like to do callbacks and drop clues and things like that. But
little Easter eggs.
Yeah, little Easter egg. Yeah, and so as I'm writing this book, Rick and I get on the phone and we're talking. And I'm like, okay, I said, we've got 5 pages here. That's going to be a knockdown drag out between these 2 characters when they meet for the first time. And, I said, I can script it, panel 1, character A punches character B. I can do that. Or if you would prefer, I'll let you choreograph the fight in the art. Up to you. I can do it either way. And he's like, ooh, that sounds like fun. Let me choreograph it. So it's great for me. There's 5 pages of the script that just says, page 20, fight. Page 21, fight. Fight, And then my whole thing was, okay, nobody can lose a limb. They've all got to have their arms and legs attached at the end, but go for it, And then
we're going to need those later.
Yeah, we're going to need those later. And so when we get to the page where we're coming out of it, I'm like, page 25, fight, last panel on page. And then I wrote that one to come out of the fight.
Right.
And it worked well because it allowed him to be more dynamic in his art because he said, for the fight, let's give some bigger panels or have them do it in a way that's different than what I thought. And then I just went in there and added some grunts and, little whatever needed to be there. And then we come out of the fight and we keep going. But that collaboration worked because we trusted each other enough in the process to know that would work.
Yeah.
And so those kind of things are great when you have an artist, especially if it's an artist you've worked with before, you've been working with a while. That can also impact the way you write your scripts. If I don't know who the artist is, I tend to overwrite, with descriptions of we're going to be go in this guy's office. I kind of describe what the office looks like, and
that is the opposite of screenwriting.
Yeah.
A director would just throw that in your face and be like, get rid of all this shit.
Yeah. And then, but if it's an artist I know, and I already know what that artist will give me because I've worked with them before, we go in an office and I know they've got it because I know what they can do. And so it's you play to the strength of the artist that you have, and you can really get a nice finished piece of art. And because I love seeing art come in because it never looks like what they give me never looks like what was in my head. And I don't say that as a bad thing. That's truly a good thing because, like a reader, I'm excited when I see pages. I'm like, ooh, and
that surprise element is, if you're surprised and excited, then that's just going to come across to your fans.
Absolutely. I agree with that. Yeah. And then you go from that stage. There's a lettering stage. Depending on the publisher, there are times when the writer goes in and says, I want dialogue here, and here, and here. And we tell them where to put it. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes it doesn't. It just goes to the letterer and they place it. It just depends on the publisher and who you're working with. And in between each of these stages, there's an editor involved. So I write the plot, it goes to the editor. They approve it. I write the script, it goes to the editor. They approve it. Goes to the penciler. The pencils come in, the editor approves. So there's an editor involved in each step. So then it goes to letters. Letters get added. Goes to a colorist. The colorist goes in and adds. Then it comes back. Depending on the publisher, sometimes I'm out of the loop at that point. Sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I am. There are times where they come back and go, "What do you think of? Here's the colors we got. Any suggestions, or does this work?" Or you go, "Does that need to be green?" That kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, it's visually, it's kind of like a movie. Your music sets your tone, and so does everything you're seeing. And even more so, since you don't have the audio for a comic book, visually, like colors matter. Batt,
absolutely.
My best friend Batt, who has designed all of my logos and everything I've done for like the last 8 years. I love him as an artist, but more so, he's like educated me so much more over the years about just colors, like what colors go together and why certain colors don't go together. And this is why Hulk and the Joker have these colors together. And this is why these comic book characters, and just like that kind of education. And it's absolutely, color is very important for the eye palette and for storytelling.
Yes, there are tricks that we learn to manipulate might be a too strong a word, but we manipulate the reader's feelings. Kind of like when you're watching a movie and sad music plays.
I was just about to say, you're not manipulating, you're emoting. So it's
that's a better word, yeah.
As a musician, so your whole chords, there's only 7 chords, but there's million augmentations of those 7 chords. But your 7 whole chords, those are your uplifting, powerful, happy chords. But as soon as you throw a minor in there, those are all your sad notes and all your sad music throughout history.
Absolutely. And so you're helping lead your audience to where you want them to go that way. You can still do that in comics or in novels. You want to speed things up? Short, choppy sentences. You read those faster. So action scenes are not big chunks of paragraphs. It's small, just so you read them faster, which speeds up the story, which speeds up the action. You want to slow things down, big paragraphs. In comics, you want to speed it up, same thing. Small bits of dialogue, and you're
okay,
laughing.
Let me explain why I'm laughing right now, because what you're saying there just reminded me of a meme I saw on Facebook the other day, which is, so what you're saying there makes perfect sense as a writer, but like when it comes to texting women, they're the complete opposite. So like when they're telling you a story and they're all excited about something, it's short little blah 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 blah. But when they're pissed off, it's one giant paragraph.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no punctuation. Yeah, it's but yeah, it's but these are tricks that you kind of I've learned over the years, from writing and reading and different ways to speed things up. The artist can certainly help speed up or slow down, the way the reader reads a page, because you can draw characters in motion and add speed lines that speeds things up, or you can, draw them without like a lot of motion in the art to slow things down. Color can certainly help with that. Somber tones to kind of, and again, you're doing a funeral scene. You want your somber tone.
Once again, if you're writing a novella or you're writing something without pictures, words matter, because the words become the pictures in your brain.
Absolutely. And you can use the way you put the words down, because if you look at a page of a novel, it's not just blocks of text. There is a bit of there's a paragraph here, but then it's a bunch of short lines. There are ways that you can use that to speed up, slow down, get emotional responses. There's all kinds of tricks you can do of how to get dialogue across. Like you can have a character like we're talking now, that's just regular typing out dialogue. But if someone wants to make a point like do not do this, that's technically 4 sentences. Do period,
Yep.
not period, and you can get a point across without having to go, he was angry. You can there's different ways of saying it, or like he emphasized every word, or there's just ways to do that without,
Yes. The why are you texting me in all caps? What did I do? Why are you texting me? Yes.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things that can come into play with doing all that. And with comics, I mean, it is a team effort. Everybody that's involved adds something to the story, because like we were talking about the letterer,
Mm-hmm.
and even though the letterer is just putting down the dialogue that I wrote, where that word balloon goes can be just as important as what's in that word balloon, because placement of word balloons, just like the art, leads you from panel 1 into panel 2 down to panel 3. There's a flow that helps move all that along. And, if you don't follow that flow, or you put things in a way that interrupts that flow, it interrupts it for the reader as well. So everybody involved, is doing their part to make this story as digestible for readers as possible. So,
yeah.
And every step too, there's an editor, who's, at every step doing whatever, and, making sure everything does flow, make sure everything's on time. There's different, oh, we missed this clue. We forgot to put this clue in. We can't, it takes too long to go back and get it redrawn. Can you tweak some dialogue?
And that's why it's important to have outside influences with more creative people. Because, I have a few friends that they do it all. They are their penciler. They are their own colorists. They do the plot. They do all the writing. They do all the art. They do all their own publishing. Like, that's a lot of work. And, and it kind of shows sometimes.
Yeah. Well, it never hurts to have an outside perspective. I mean, no matter who you are, we all need editors, because sometimes, as a writer, I'm writing and I might not catch the mistake because my brain is filling in the mistake in my head because I know what's supposed to be there.
Right.
Or if someone else goes, oh, you forgot, well, this doesn't make any sense. And I go, oh, what's this? He goes, well, it'd be nice if you said that in there. And then you realize, oh, yeah, okay.
I would just blame that on my dyslexia.
Yeah, because it's in our head. Like I said, as I'm writing these things, I see them in my head. And so, yeah, there are times that my brain moves faster than my fingers and you skip stuff or stuff, I make typos like crazy because I type fast. And I'm like, oh, screwed that up. Let's go fix it, So, yeah, so having an outsider, someone outside the story look at it definitely helps. It's also good too, because just because I understand something doesn't mean other people will. Just because I wrote in some pop culture references doesn't mean everybody's going to get them.
Right.
Working with people in other countries, there are cultural differences. I'll give you a good example. There's a book, a friend of mine and I co-wrote this book together, and we're working with an artist out of Brazil. The book's not out yet. We're still getting it all put together, but we get some art. We're getting art back, and we're looking at the art. My writer friend and I, we're looking at the art, and we're like, I don't know what this is. There's a panel where the character is sitting on the sidewalk, leaning against a car, talking on the cell phone. I'm like, I know I didn't write that. So we pull up the script, and then we start laughing because I wrote he was surveying, like surveillancing a house to make sure and wait until there was no one home. He was going to break in the house. And so I wrote in the script, he's sitting behind the wheel of his car on the phone watching the house. Okay. Here in the United States, sitting behind the wheel means you're in the driver's seat behind the steering wheel.
Yeah.
In Brazil, that's not what that means. So he drew him sitting beside the wheel on the curb. But it's such a beautiful drawing. We left it. We were like, you know what? This works. It's fine. It's, but it is that so there are things like that with the
Lost in translation.
Language. Yeah, lost in translation. I remember I was at a panel at a convention once, and an author there was like, yeah, I was writing this space thing. And so he says, this is when I learned not to use movie terms. Because the plan was, we're in space. I want to come down through the panels until we see the planet. And so I wrote helicopter shot, to describe the camera angle. And so what he gets is a helicopter shooting the first panel, which is, and he's like, why is there a helicopter in space? And he's like, oh, yeah. So you have to be careful of those things, too, that just because it's, it makes sense in your head does not mean everybody's going to interpret it the same way. So you have to be careful of those things. So I'm glad I could give you a good laugh on that.
Absolutely. And I get it. And it is up to interpretation. Like, I think I'm hilarious. My family does not.
Yeah. and I have that same problem. Yes.
And Lord knows, look, the sexiest thing on the planet to me is a smart woman, because I hate having to explain my pop culture references, my history references, my jokes, or anything like that. Please don't let me explain myself. I come from a very cultured background. Like, I played sports. I didn't realize I was a nerd until I was an adult. Like,
Mm-hmm.
But music, sports, all things. I come from one of those backgrounds. All things. I'm looking pity. I should not pull that up again. But that's the way we were raised. Not just one thing and one niche. Like, you like Doctor Who, and that's it. How dare you like Star Trek and Star Wars too? Like, fandom has kind of gotten toxic that way. And these kids growing up now don't understand the trouble nerds went through getting picked on and pushed in lockers by all the jocks back in the day, to get to the point where we are now, where they have this much amazing entertainment in TVs, movies, and books, and cartoons, types of things, visually stunning, that I never thought I would see in my entire lifetime. Like, I thought Jaws 3D was as good as it was going to get.
Mm-hmm.
And we remember what crap that was.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So speaking
it's like, too, like when I was a kid, I was not cool because I liked things like, Marvel and, DC and Star Trek and things like that. I was not cool because I liked those. Yes. And so then there was this shift where a few years ago, I'm now not cool enough to like these things.
Right?
It's this weird shift, where I knew that we had gotten, that pop culture had gone mainstream when my mother called me a few years ago. She called me one day and says, okay, explain this Thor guy to me. I knew at that point that we had arrived, because these were people that didn't care about this stuff at all when I was a kid. It was just weird stuff that I was into. And so
it all started with Keaton Batman.
Yeah. I love the fact that there are people who, I kind of get a kick out of it. People who used to laugh about me liking this stuff are now coming out and going like, oh my God, did you see the Avengers movie? And I'm like, yes, I did. Yeah. And they can't, the geek in me it's the little things, seeing Cap, Thor, the characters I grew up reading is awesome, but those are the big guys. I always expected we would get them eventually, but the ones I geek out over is when we saw Agnar the Screamer on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or Crusher Creel, the Absorbing Man, those characters I never thought we'd see anywhere. Batroc the Leaper, I'm geeking out and people who next to me in the theater are like, why is that funny? I'm like, oh, trust me. And so stuff like that is really cool. And, yeah, I've been waiting all my life for these kind of movies. And so I'm glad they're here. I'm glad they're as well received as they are.
Yeah.
And as
making
much as,
so much money, but
yeah,
yet still not.
I do, the only thing I
not
do
represented in the award shows properly.
try, I do wish more people that like these movies would go check out the books. I don't think there's a lot of people that just don't. You know, it's like I like the movies, I'm good, and that's fine. I mean, I don't knock anybody for how they like them, but I do. It would be nice to see the comics get a bigger boost from them.
Well, and you know, you look at the trajectory over the last years of Marvel movies and how they started out with Iron Man, and they have actually helped the overall sales of not just Marvel comics, but DC, Dark Horse, IDW. They have helped lift the overall sales of all the comic books out there, but not in a point where it's wildly successful. Like, look, people, there's not a lot of money in comic books. I know everybody wants to be a comic book creator, but there's not a lot of money in it. Sorry.
Any of the like writing, drawing, those, it's a hell, even acting, you know, or music or any of these things. It's a very, you know, it's very feast or famine.
What have you done for me lately?
Yeah, it's, you know, you'll go 1 month and you'll make good money and you're like, ooh, I'm good. And then the next 2 months you don't make anything. Or, you know, if you're working for publishers, you know, it's like I got a gig, I don't get another gig for 3 months, you know. And yes, there are people that, you know, that make a good living at it, but there's a lot more people that don't, that have day jobs to supplement or things like that, or another type of supplement, or their husband or their wife works and allows them to do this work. And so there's a lot of that. There's, you know, but most creators, I mean, no matter who you're working for, you're still like a small business on your, you know, that's why part of the reason, and part of it's because we love it, but that's part of the reason we do conventions. That's part of our marketing. That's part of getting the word out.
Supplemental income when you're not being paid to create.
Absolutely. You know, that's why artists do commissions, you know, people do smaller projects just to get stuff out. You know, there's sometimes you work on, as a writer, there's no money in working on anthologies, but you do that because you want to work on this character, or you want to work with these people, or there's different ways of getting stuff out there, so we're always trying to get people to see our stuff. And so it's like a small business, everything we do. And I know currently, you know, I just did a podcast last night talking about conventions this year because, you know, so many conventions are canceling, and it is hurting a lot of not just creators who are missing out on their convention revenue, but vendors, you know, dealers, people who've already bought stock that they can't sell now because they're not at the con.
Concession stand workers, I mean, janitors, a lot of people. One convention employs a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely. And depending on the size of the convention too, I mean, this, you know, hotels get involved, restaurants are involved.
Oh.
You know, and especially when you get a big con like San Diego or a Dragon Con, where they know that brings in thousands upon thousands of people. So the restaurants stock up, and, you know, the hotels stock up. And then if it gets canceled, you know, you're still stuck with that stock. People have airline tickets they can't get refunds on. Hotels are a little better about letting you, you know, do things. But so there's a lot of moving parts, but yeah, so when you see people at cons, you know, we're all there hustling because that's just part of our job. Hustling. We love being there. Yes, we love being there, you know. But, you know, it's just something to think about that. I mean, even the actors who everybody thinks, oh, they're just, what was that quote a couple years ago? Oh, they're taking home, you know, garbage sacks full of 20s. They're still there working. I mean, that's still, you know,
And if they're not working on a film or TV, they're not getting paid. If they're not at a convention, they're not getting paid. Just because you did one movie or one TV show doesn't make you a multimillionaire. Not everybody's Tom Cruise and overpaid for crap acting.
Yeah, and it's and there's it's just like I said. Plus, they're also building their brand. I mean, we're all out there. Someone comes up to my table. This is my brand. This is me. I'm not just selling these books. I'm selling me. And so there's I'm happy to talk to anybody that comes to the table. I am not a hard seller guy, which I'd probably sell more if I was more of a, in your face, but I'm not. That's just not me. Hey, I have books. Here they are. I'll tell you anything about them.
But you bring up a valid point, because I know so many different types in the convention scene, and man, I'm going to say 70% of them are introverts. And it's difficult as an introvert to put you're not just, like you said, you're not branding your product or your art or your book. You're branding yourself. And that's the hard part for a lot of creators being introverts, is pushing, they can push their product, but pushing themselves is one thing. Yeah. And Lord knows I've had many interviews that I've never even put up on my YouTube channel, because it was just like pulling teeth trying to get this person to even talk about their product. Like, where's your passion? This is your passion, something you love, and you can't even talk about it.
Oddly enough, I when I first started out, I was very shy, very quiet. And I sometimes fall back into that. But doing stuff like this, doing podcasts, doing interviews, doing conventions, helped me break out of that. When I first started back in the 90s, you would have been pulling answers out of me, but I've done this so long now that a lot of this comes out just automatically. I know, I've answered a lot of these questions, or I've had these conversations before. So it's in there, but meeting people was always hard for me, talking to strangers and having some way to break the ice was always hard.
Right.
The conventions help that, because that table full of books is the icebreaker. You came up to the table to look at stuff, and I can introduce myself and say, please feel free to take a look. I will answer any questions you have, and you leave them alone. And then when they look at stuff, you start talking, get that back and forth going, and you're fine. But that was tough for me in the early days, was getting past that initial, hi, how are you? And I try to be friendly. I looked at other creators early on in my career doing conventions, because I did conventions before I was a guest at conventions. I would go to them, and I looked around, and there were a few people that I saw doing things where I'm like, I love the way they do things. Let me watch what they're doing. George Perez, I would put at the top of the guest list.
I love George.
If there's anybody you ever want to emulate in how you deal with your fans,
he's so good.
George is the man. George treats everyone who comes by him like a long lost friend.
So does Sergio.
Sergio is another one. I had nothing but good interactions with Sergio. Fantastic guy. Treats you just like, he's so happy you're there. Thanks you for coming. There's others. I could name hundreds of them.
Oh yeah.
Several actors as well. I've talked to over the years or whatever.
Well, and that's the thing. I've had so few real negative, bad interactions with anyone at a convention, and I think that's really good advice that you're bringing up here. Is there are different ways to approach the people at the convention to get your sales in. There's aggressive, and then there's less aggressive, and I think there is. You can't be too aggressive, and here's why. Because like a lot of the creators are introverts, man, so are so many of the guests. So many of the guests are just these timid little nerds at these conventions. Like I watch them just wander around, just wide-eyed at everything, not knowing what to do, what to look at, what they can touch, who to talk to, and they're just freaked out by that. It takes a few conventions before you're calm down and used to a convention. Like a lot of these people don't know what to do. So how do you approach someone like that?
It is very much sensory overload. especially if you do a big con. Walk into San Diego or Dragon Con or, Chicago, one of these big monster shows, or New York, where it's holy crap, as far as the eye can see, geek stuff, and it's like, holy crap, that's over there, and it really can overwhelm you. And I see that, you can always tell the new people because they do have that why, this is my first con ever. And I'm like, welcome to the club,
Versions.
Yeah. And it's like, but it is cool watching the fans, how they do that. And cons have changed a lot since I started doing them. When I first started doing cons were really there. That's where you went looking for merchandise. You went looking for the most hard to find things because we didn't have an internet.
There was no eBay.
Yeah, there was no eBay. You couldn't just pop on Amazon and go, I want this, and somebody's got it. There were, it used to be, I love the old, well, not old, but I love what are they called? The TV shows they do, like each season where they go through the episodes and they interview people and they do write-ups of the episodes, whatever those are called, I forget. But there's a publisher out of the UK that did those for years, but they were never on bookshelves here. But I'd go to every year at Dragon Con, there was a dealer that had them, and I would make it a point every year to go, and I'd stock up because that was the only way to get them. Now I can just go on, like I said, I can go on Amazon, I can go on eBay, whatever. There's multiple places to find them. So I've noticed the conventions have changed a little. And it's not a bad thing, but there's a component now it's become a social event, right, for so many people. They're there in their costumes, or they're there just to hang out with friends and see the sights, and it is interesting to see. And
Look, I got a ton of cosplay friends, and I respect what they do. Like, they put a lot of hard work into their cosplay too. But at the same time, a lot of them never even go inside the convention, nor do they even have a pass. And there's 2,000 cosplayers in the Anaheim convention hallway that you're trying to work your way around just to get in to go to the hall. Like, sometimes. I love you guys, but sometimes just kind of get the hell out of the way.
Yeah, but so I see it's definitely, things are changing, so I've had to kind of change how I do my setup and things, so yeah, but it's, the cons are fun. I love a good con. They're expensive, so I don't get to do as many as I would like. It's been a while since I've been to San Diego. Actually,
that's a hard one to break even at, though.
Yeah. This year, all of the events that I have scheduled and or have canceled at this point were in the state of Georgia. I couldn't travel this year. It's just I needed a break from it because I sell stuff at the shows, but then by the time you pay for travel and hotel, and some shows you have to pay for a table, some as a guest they give you a table.
But then there's still eating, there's the travel, there's all of it. A lot goes into it.
You had to buy books to take to the show, and so there's a lot there. And the last couple of years have just there was more break even than there was make a profit, or come home and go, well, that cost me $500 and I sold $100. So as a business, you have to also look at this as a business.
And it's a difficult business model because, like you said, it fluctuates according to which con you're in. And for those up-and-coming creators, some of the smaller conventions or cons are easier to get into than WonderCon or San Diego Comic-Con. And it's not going to be as big and oversaturated with as many talent around you, so you might have a better opportunity to at least break even, let alone make money.
Yeah. Oh, I love the small cons. They there may be 2,000 people or less, but that's okay. I mean, I still enjoy the small cons. There's here in Georgia we have several like one-day shows. There's a lot of library shows here where it's just 4 or 5 hours on a Saturday, or what's a one day, whatever. And I find those fun, and they're inexpensive for me to try, to set up, because I don't have to do a hotel. I drive, do the show, drive home. So those are helpful for also meeting people. I mean, you're still promoting as part of promoting your brand too. I mean, I'm at the show, so I promote the show that beforehand that I'm going to be there. I take photos at the show and post them to social media while I'm there. And then I do a little post promotion where I talk about the convention after it's over. And so I'm not only while I'm promoting the convention, you're still promoting yourself because there's photos of you behind your table and there's, all these kind of things that you can do to get the word out. And so I look at the conventions as part of my marketing. That's me promoting without me posting, hey, buy my book, because people ignore that. I mean, if that's all you do is buy this, buy this, buy that, So conventions are part of my marketing because I'm sharing the stuff while I'm at the convention, but I'm also passing out cards. If anybody stops by my table, they get a card, whether they buy anything or not. Right. And I do notice sometimes people will buy stuff later. So it's all about getting the word out, or, they may see me at the next show and go, oh yeah, I saw you at the last show and I didn't have any money to buy your book. I want to get it now. Mm-hmm. So there are opportunities so it's not all about
the Sunday shoppers. I do that all the time too, though. Like, for a weekend convention, you scope out everything you want, figure out your budget, and then you buy on Sunday. Mm-hmm. So, and a lot of times for those of you who don't go to Comic Cons out there, your best deals are on Sunday because, quite frankly, the vendors don't want to take all this stuff home. So they're cutting better deals on Sundays so that they can mm-hmm. unload, so they have less to take home. But also, like, if you can't find a big con or even a small con, like, find your local comic book, support your local comic book shop. Like, there's always cool little events going on with signings with writers and artists at little comic book shops around the country.
Yeah. And if you can't go to cons, or there are people that don't like crowds, if for some reason going to cons is not on your radar, there are ways you can get part of the experience. Like, people, you can still get commissions from artists without going to a con to have them do it at the con. Most of them do things through their website. If you want an autographed book, most people sell through their websites. They'll sign and, or in some cases, if you bought a book and mail it to them, they'll sign it and mail it back to you. There's multiple ways you can still.
On top of that, I have a friend who runs a company. That's all he does. He collects collectibles from people, goes to a convention, gets them signed, and then ships them to whoever paid for it.
Yeah. So there's things like that. There are more and more people doing things like this where you can see video and ask questions. I've done some Facebook Live that way where, here I am. I'll read a little from the book, ask me some questions, and I'll answer them. That's the panel experience brought home. There are ways to where, if the thought of going to Dragon Con and there are 80,000 people that are there terrifies you.
It's 2020, use the technology to your advantage.
Exactly. Because you can watch the panels because they're going to stream them. You can, they have people going, you can see stuff, see the around the convention, all the people there. The parade is on TV. So it's all there. I mean, you can catch all of this stuff without ever leaving your home. And most guests, there's a way to get in touch with them. There's a way to get that autographed photo if you want it.
Yeah, absolutely. Where there's a will, there's a way. All right, quick subject change. Have you been watching Jack Ryan with John Krasinski?
I love Jack Ryan. Yep, very good.
Okay, because when they announced that, and I'm like, John Krasinski, what, the dude from Office? What are you guys thinking? And then the first season came out, and I was like, he is so good in this role.
And then the second season came out, and it was so much better.
Yeah.
Like as good as the first season is, the second season is really tight.
Yeah, with just the plot and the plot driven, and just like it was emotionally driven more so than the first season too.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it moved a little faster too. The pace seemed to pick up. Like the first season, there were a lot of slow bits, and
almost like they didn't want to make it too actiony and wanted to keep it more in tune with the books.
Right.
And then realize, well, you know what? This is a TV show. Let's give them the action.
And plus, they probably realized that more people know who Jack Ryan is from the Harrison Ford movies.
Exactly. Yeah.
Than the so yeah, because I've never read a Jack Ryan novel.
I've only seen the movies. I haven't read one.
I've only seen the movies, yeah. And so I enjoy the character from the movies. So yeah, I thought the show was great. I think we're in a golden age of TV and of entertainment, of ways to get novels translated to TV. Certainly, Jack Ryan's a good one. The Bosch series on Amazon Prime.
Oh, I've been meaning to start that. Okay.
I love the Harry Bosch novels.
Strike Back. I don't know if you watch Strike Back on Amazon.
Yeah.
Great series, great action series. Yes. What else are you nerding out on? What else are you watching?
What else am I'm watching. I'm so far behind on this. I'm watching Spencer for Hire, which I did not watch the first go around.
Wait. Are you talking the old 80s?
Yeah.
Oh man, that was such a good show. Okay, you know what? The Mark Wahlberg Netflix movie wasn't bad. Wasn't great, but it wasn't bad.
If they'd have called, you know what? I probably would have liked it more if they'd have called it something other than Spencer, because it didn't really feel like Spencer.
No.
But I'm loving the show, and I'm a huge. I mean, I like Robert Urick's awesome, but I'm a huge Avery Brooks fan, and so which is weird. I've seen A Man Called Hawk, but I've never seen Spencer. So I'm watching.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so I'm watching Spencer, and I'm loving it because I knew Avery obviously from Deep Space Nine, and met him at a convention. He's another one at the conventions where I'm like, when I met him for like 5 minutes, he treated me like I was the only person in the room, and I was like, that's cool, and so, but I'm loving that. That's that cool kind of similar like 80s PI thing, like my snow books, and so that's really my my area there. Hunters was good on the Al Pacino Nazi hunting thing on Amazon.
Okay, that was, pardon my French, but so fucking good.
Yeah. What else? What have I been binging lately? I can't really.
Are you watching Kidding?
I haven't seen that one. No.
It is okay. I don't know how you are with Jim Carrey and everything, but like I'm a huge Jim Carrey fan. I've always loved him, and ever since he's gone existential and just like in his interviews and just like, ooh yeah, I'm going to talk about life and real life, and just like I respect him even more. And Kidding is just so intensely good in just all of humanity's ways, in the worst of us and the best of us. It's like a brand new Mr. Rogers for adults.
Oh, yeah, interesting. I will check that out.
Yeah.
Little Jim Carrey. I was an extra in Dumb and Dumber 2.
Oh no way.
So I got to watch him work I worked on it for like 2 weeks. There's one great scene of me, and you can really see me. And where we're waiting in line to get into like the convention.
Okay.
And, yeah. So,
I know that scene. I'll look for that next time I watch it.
Yeah, I'm wearing like a maroon shirt, and I'm sitting there looking impatient. That's me. So you didn't even have to act. Yeah, didn't even have to act. Yeah, it's I got on a list there for a while where if they needed an irritated or angry fat guy, they called me. And actually, this right here, I've never had a beard before in my life, like a full beard. I actually grew this out for one role in a show that hasn't come out yet. That'll be on Netflix. And I grew this out, and I said, oh, this is kind of nice. I'll keep it. And then last week, because of the beard, I got another role. So I was like, man, I should have grown one of these years ago.
Well, you know what? That's funny. I got my one and only acting gig the same way. I got picked out from a headshot just because I had long hair at the time and a beard. And it was for the Spike TV's The Greatest Warriors. I was in the second season, episode 2, Attila the Hun versus Alexander the Great. And Attila the Hun comes up riding on a horse and shoots me in the chest with an arrow. I was in every single promo for a full week leading up to it. It was just like, oh my God, this is my 15 seconds. And then I was in the one and only shot when it finally aired. But the same thing, like the only reason I got the job was because of my beard and my long hair. And when I got there and got the makeup department, I was the only person they didn't have to put a wig on or a beard on. They literally just dirtied up my face, took me outside, grabbed dirt from the ground, and just covered me in dirt and was like, "You're good to go. Thanks for being so easy." And the funny part was, though, they were short on stunt actors. So the stunt coordinator comes over and is like, "Hey, anyone want to do some stunt acting today?" So like 3 of us just extras were like, "Hell yeah." And all because of that, like I wrecked myself that day because I didn't have the back brace, the knee pads, I was wearing moccasins, but I didn't have the arch supports that the professionals were using. So like I couldn't walk for a week after that, but it was worth it because I was in every commercial trailer for a week. Like every time they said "Attila the Hun," boom, I was the next shot. So
Nice.
it was totally worth it. And yeah. But yeah. And once you grow the fluffiness, it's nice to be fluffy.
Yeah. Yeah, because I worked the other night, and I worked the other night, and it was. I was supposed to work this week, but they obviously postponed things there as well. So,
well, there's a few questions I'd like to ask everybody to kind of wrap this up.
okay.
I'd love to talk about health and who we are as humans. What do you do for your own mental health?
I sleep. Sleep's good.
Important.
Actually, I in the last year or less, I've made it a point to try to go to bed and get up at the same time. I don't always, because sometimes, like I said, you get in the zone and you're, but I'm a night owl. So for me, going to bed is 4 o'clock, 5 in the morning, sleeping till noon.
That's typical with creators.
Yeah. But I'm trying to do it to where it's consistent. I used to not be that way. It'd be like, tonight I'm going to bed at 11, tomorrow night I'll go to bed at 3. And that throws you off. I do feel better trying to go to bed around the same time, getting up around the same time. It just keeps you in kind of a balance, I guess.
Absolutely.
So that helps. And like last year, I had some health issues. I became diabetic like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. And they put me on medicine. We got it under control. And then as soon as it's under control, they said, let's change your medicine. I'm like, okay. Then it went out of control. So they put me back on the other medicine, got it back under control. And they said, great, we're going to change your medicine. They took me off of it, put me on something else, and it really went out of control. And so now I'm back on the medicine again, and we're back under control. So there was a lot of laying around, and one of the medicines caused like muscle cramps, so it's hard to walk, and sciatica and all that stuff, blah, blah, blah. But I'm feeling much better now, back on a good medicine that is getting it under control. I do try to eat a little better, because of that. I still have my one fatal weakness that I try to keep to 1 a day.
Mine's coffee.
Yeah, it's sometimes I need the boost, but I try to get better with that. I try to go to the gym, do walking, things like that. Obviously, right now we're not doing any of that because, so many places are closed or don't come, or, my dad has some back issues, and he goes to work out he does aqua thing at the gym where he walks in the pool and does his exercises. So I go and help him do that and things like that. But as far as mental health, definitely getting the right hours of sleep. I try not to let things irritate me. I fail at that quite often. But
I constantly am working on patience.
Yes. I have it. It's in a box over there.
I just don't let it out very often.
Yeah.
No, but you're right. And mind, body, spirit, healthy movement, healthy diet, healthy thought, and getting the proper amount of sleep, which I have a hard time with because of all my pain and the health issues I have. Just getting a full night's sleep. Like, I'm lucky. I'm holding on right now just to do this podcast with you today.
Well, I appreciate it, and I know I've yammered quite a bit. So.
No. It's actually the perfect length podcast. Okay, so who's your favorite superhero?
Ooh, that's one that does change from time to time. But it depending on the day, it's either Thor or Captain America.
Okay, those are
Now,
interesting.
but and those were characters that I come to know after I got into comics. Captain America, I love the fact that he has that the American ideal.
Boy Scout.
Yeah, he is the American. He doesn't symbolize America. He symbolizes the American dream, what we could be, and he fights for that. And he's one of those guys never gives up kind of guy. Which, and I think the movies really captured Captain America.
Mm-hmm,
I think Chris Evans. I think he is just fantastic in the role.
Plus, they did a really good job of showing like the progressiveness of how much he started using the shield better in each movie too. Because if you look at the original comic books, like he just doesn't come out throwing that thing around like he's some badass. Like he worked up to that.
Yeah, and so there's a lot to admire about that character. Thor kind of has the same thing with the will never give up thing, but there's just what attracted me to the character of Thor was the artwork, those old Jack Kirby covers.
Oh yeah.
Or when Walt Simonson worked on the book, they were big. Like the covers made you. This is a big story. It's big action. It's Thor and this monster, and it's whereas Cap's stories
and they took you out of this world.
Yeah, they were they were big, epic. Everything felt like it's going to be an epic, and so those characters, and that's another one too. I think they captured him well in the movies. I think Chris Hemsworth plays a fantastic Thor.
And he does do a great job. And I think one of the things I like about the Thor character in general, not just Chris Hemsworth's version, but in general, is his will to do things right, but he's a very flawed character.
Exactly. Yeah, because he's very much he's very brash and selfish and all, and arrogant, and Odin has to smack him down every once in a while, and I think he learns a lot from doing that. I also think when he comes, his love of the earth and spending all that time on Earth, I think also what makes him a better character is his interactions with Captain America and the Avengers and Iron Man and those guys. And those characters teach him something that he didn't quite learn in Asgard. And so just great characters to follow. And so, so those are probably my two favorite just standalone characters. But it was Spider-Man that got me into comics, though. I think,
gotcha.
It was a cartoon. It was from the cartoon to the comics.
Mm-hmm.
The first comics I remember owning.
I'm trying to get my nephew into X-Men right now because the comics, the cartoons on Saturdays got me into X-Men. Yeah.
I remember the cartoon from used to watch the 66. I'm not old enough to have seen it originally, but it was on after school in the 70s.
Right.
And I remember the first three comics I owned was a 3-pack that was in the checkout aisle of Zayre, which was a store that used to be around. And I remember my mom and I were in the check, and I can tell there's 2 Spider-Man books. You can never see the middle, but there's 2 Spider-Man books, and I begged my mother. And she cracked. She let me get them. And when I opened it up, there was another Spider-Man in the middle, and it was 3 consecutive issues.
Oh, so no, that never happens.
Yeah, it was issues 192, 193, and 194. I still have them. Yeah, it was one of those that I think were like someone local was doing that, and they would sell them. And but they were great, and I fell in love. It was They were great Spider-Man stories. The first Black Cat was in that last issue. Just I was hooked. And from there, I discovered other characters. The Fantastic Four is another favorite of mine. And so I discovered all those, but it was Spider-Man that got me there.
Gotcha. Okay, so then your good guys are only as good as bad as your baddies are. Who's your favorite bad guy?
Ooh, that's a good one. I want to say Galactus, but I don't always consider Galactus a bad guy.
I've gotten that from a few people.
Galactus is this force of nature. It's like calling a tornado a bad guy.
It's like Silver Surfer. Is he a bad guy or a good guy?
Right. But I do love how Galactus is portrayed. There's something to be said for the character of the Joker.
I was going to say, it's refreshing to not hear the Joker.
Right. There is something, like in the comics, there's so many different versions of him. And of course, to me, the ultimate version of the Joker's Mark Hamill's version.
Oh, man,
That's who I hear when I read any stories of the Joker.
Right.
Plus, I find, too, that there's moments in his performance where I find the Joker sympathetic.
Right.
And then he turns around and does something batshit crazy that makes me go, oh, yeah, there he is. And sorry, I hope it was okay to say that on here. I didn't ask what the language was. Sorry.
Our viewers are males from 18 to 35. They don't fucking care.
Okay. But so, yeah. But I love a good nuanced villain.
Right.
And, because the best villains don't think they're villains. Dr. Doom does not think he's a villain.
Yeah.
Dr. Doom thinks he's saving the world.
So does Darth Vader.
Yeah, Lex Luthor does not think he's a villain.
Absolutely.
He's trying to kill this alien and halt what he thinks is an alien invasion. So the best villains are like that. And so, at different times, Dr. Doom or Lex Luthor would be on my tops depending on who's writing them.
Well, then let me suggest something for you, since you brought that up in the Mark Hamill thing, and I like to cross promote different podcasts I've done, because I had Neil Fisher on a past podcast. He is one of the producers from a film called Sushi Girl. I don't know if you've seen it. You have seen it. Mm-hmm. Okay. Because that's pretty much kind of what made people go, holy crap, Mark Hamill can be a bad guy, and then next thing you know, he was the Joker. So I was gonna say, if you haven't seen that, you need to watch that. So
yeah, I think, and Mark's one of those guys too. I think he's one of those guys that has become a better actor as he gets older.
Right.
Because the Mark Hamill that was in, he's become a much better actor, I think, and it was a thrill seeing him return in the new Star Wars movies, or even more so, like when he played the trickster on The Flash.
Oh, that was so much fun. Yes.
It's like, so seeing him play these characters he's played years ago, and I'm finding them much more enjoyable now because he is a better actor. And yeah, he doesn't get enough credit, I don't think, but
I agree.
Yeah, he's a great actor.
Well, tell everybody out there where they can find your books, find you on Instagram, and follow you on social media.
I am all over the social medias. My website is bobbynash.com. There are links to everything on there. The self-published stuff, they're ben-books.com. That's my publishing company. The Snow Books have their own website, but they're also on those too. If you go to abrahamsnow.com, that's just the Snow site. I have Facebook. It's facebook.com/author Bobby Nash. I have an Amazon page with links to all my books. Instagram is instagram.com/Bobby Nash Writes. Twitter, I'm at Bobby Nash. I'm also on like LinkedIn and Goodreads and all those things if you want to check those out. Have a Patreon page. It's Patreon/Bobby Nash. So I'm all over the place. Feel free to hit me up, say hi.
And like usual, folks, you can find all those links in the little section down there that you can click on them, right? You're on YouTube. Go down there. Click on them. Give him a like. Give him a follow. Order some of his books. Find him at a convention so you can get a personalized book signed. And if he's not at a convention near you, hit up the convention runners and the event staff so that you can have Bobby Nash at a convention near you and you can meet him in person.
Absolutely. And I do have a store on bobbynash.com that if you want to just buy autographed books directly from me, I have a store that does that as well.
Wonderful. Make sure y'all check him out. And I got to tell you, this has been a wonderful conversation. It went by really quick.
Yes, I have had a ball. This has been fun. I haven't done a video one in a while, so it's kind of I keep, I do a lot of audio podcasts where I can sit like this, and I keep having to resist the urge to go like this and talk because it. So yeah, I keep watching my little face up there to make sure I'm in the frame. It's like, nope, you're slouching. So
Yeah. No, I got to remember to look into the camera and sit up straight often myself, because otherwise I just end up like this and nobody needs to see that for the entire podcast.
Yeah. Well, I got prepared. I put it on a box so it was a little higher so it would frame better. And so, yeah, all these things I never think about when I do just the audio podcasts. So, but this has been fun. Thank you so much for having me.
It's been my pleasure, and hopefully I get to see you at a convention somewhere here or there once I'm physically able to start going to conventions. And
absolutely,
maybe we can have you back on the show again somewhere down the road. And until then, we will see you somewhere down the road.
All right. Bye.
There we go.